You hear us, Dr. B?
Dr. B.
There we are. All right, I'm in. Hey.
I'm in.
Leslie's outside.
People that are really, really good friends are really upset with each other. And it has to do with the oversimplified way to say this is what restrictions they're taking relative to the COVID-19 and what others are not.
I'm Jenny Wallace. I currently live in a town outside of Boulder, Colorado, and I am both a dermatologist and a pathologist, which means I read skin biopsies. Medically speaking, we were so slow, like we didn't even have patients and nobody wanted to come in. And so we weren't seeing patients for a couple weeks, which meant I had no work, and things have gotten better there. We're getting busy again. People are coming into the clinic and we're wearing masks. And so we're turning a corner. I think this next week, things are going to be kind of similar to how they were before. And for me, like personally, I'm highly wired for enjoying solitude. I feel the emotions of everybody around me. I'm really empathetic, and I can empathize with the fear and the uncertainty from other things that I've been through in my life. But I don't have necessarily the same fears that people do around this virus. There's that aspect. And then there's also the wise aspect of like, how do we respect our fellow man and do the best that we can, and also holding in balance that we're not in control. And that's been the struggle for me of like going to the grocery store, honoring the people around me, wearing a mask, washing my hands, but also not falling off the cliff of letting it overtake me. So I guess that's kind of where I am, if that explains it.
So my name is Chris Berry. I'm a family medicine doctor here in Dallas, Texas. I work almost exclusively now in outpatient clinics, meaning outside of the hospital. I think even really before the quarantine orders had fully hit Dallas, I was talking to people all over Texas, mainly Texas, but then all over the country, who were really sick and really scared. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is definitely something different. And then I was really paying close attention to what was happening in northern Italy. And then as it came into New York City, and I thought that, and then hearing about, I think one of the things that really got to me as well was just hearing about the nurses and the doctors who were getting sick, and some of them were dying. And I just never had seen anything like that before. And I could tell as the medical community tries to continue, even today, to understand what this virus is, it really, there's a lot we still don't know. Now, some of the later Jenny, as a dermatologist, there's dermatologic findings. I've seen patients that I think had COVID and they were having viral exanthems. There's strokes happening. There's some weird hypercoagulable state, all kinds of different things. So it's definitely, it's a new bug, that's, it's almost like an alien that's invaded our world. And so I've seen it as a pretty big deal. It definitely has professionally affected me. Like the whole independent physician world is kind of turned upside down. The way that we survive financially, the business of medicine is being exposed, I think, as needing to be changed. I think we've known this for a long time, but this really helps to expose it. In that the people, some of the doctors that we need the most right now, the primary care doctors, are actually not going to work, or they're seeing very few people, and many are going to go out of business at the time that we need them the most, which is crazy. Why is that? How can we have a health system that works that way? Well, it's just because that's how we've structured the business of our health system. It's helped to expose a lot of need for change, and it's definitely kind of made me think a lot about my profession. At the same time, I also recognize that as serious of an illness as this is, it's not like the movie Contagion, if anyone has seen that, where, just 20-30% of the world's population is dead. It's not that. And yet it's still really serious. And so that's part of where I think some of these struggles start to happen amongst different people in America, where some folks have a real contentious view. Some folks see that the need to isolate is absolutely critical, and others are really questioning it. I think there is quite a bit of variety in what people are experiencing.
So I'm Leslie Wilcott. I'm a nurse and a counselor. Not that I didn't take it seriously, but I certainly had almost zero fear about it. I'm involved in cardiovascular research, and specifically with critical aortic stenosis, which is a heart condition that once you have symptoms, the latest data is that you have a 50% chance being alive in a year. And here I am. I've not touched anybody for 8 weeks, but I'm dealing with. I'm certainly more on the data side of things, and so I go into work a couple of days a week. I'm there for a long time. Occasionally I'll see somebody, but I can't touch them. I won't touch them. I don't have any compelling reason to do that, unfortunately, or fortunately. And then also we had 5 COVID trials going on downstairs, 3 drug trials, 2 vaccine. And so I'm seeing it going. I feel like I'm this little floaty ball that's floating amongst it, but not really up in front of it. And there's some guilt that goes along with that. I mean, my first 10 years of nursing was in the ICU, and I kind of wanted to jump in and help, even though I might be a total pariah, right? And in that area right now, but I'm not fearful. I'm very cognizant. I want to love my neighbor. I want to love the vulnerable among us. And I don't know that we really know who that is. And so I don't want to say, I actually have a friend who's 38. She is tested positive for it. It's been awful for her. She's in Florida. She lives with her 70-year-old mother right now, who got it and it wasn't as bad. So it's turning us on, everything we think we know about things is getting turned on its head. There are things that we know and things that we don't, and a lot that lies in the middle. And how is it to act, to behave wisely without fear-mongering and giving room for all of the reactions that are there. It's, as a counselor, it's a really interesting to hear and sit and listen to different perspectives of some people who are very, very scared, some people who are actually really enjoying the solitude. And just as you said, most of the world, I feel like, and I think a lot of my introverted clients certainly feel like, this is actually what most of the world is feeling right now. I don't really know what most of the world is. That's kind of anxiety I live with all the time. And so it's kind of a flip of a switch, and there's almost some guilt associated with it, or some like, oh gosh, am I a axe murderer? I'm actually enjoying this time. It's a very interesting, I've done a lot of introspection, and I think getting caught in my own head about how I'm behaving, reacting, and treating my neighbor. We're never on the same page about anything, really, ever. But now we're all under the same pressure. Every single one of us is affected by it in one way or another, or what we're being asked to do or not do. We're all under the same pressure. So there's no release valve anywhere.
So I think for me, because I definitely kind of fall on the side of I'm taking precautions, but I'm also I have had people be angry with me that I'm not doing more, and that made me angry, because I was like, look, I know I'm following the, and at those moments, I didn't react when they were like, why aren't you doing this and this and this? And I just like didn't say anything. And then like a few days later, I was like, they're saying these things because they love me and they're worried for me, or it's out of a place of fear. And I think that if we can see that the fighting and the whatever, it's out of a place of like fear. And so I just see people fighting for validation of their fear. So if you see someone else not wearing their whatever, it feels invalidating.
I got several different friends sent me things that weren't so much about should we wear a mask or not wear a mask. There was like these, I would say, these kind of bizarre conspiracy theories that were like, golly. And so they were asking my opinion on them. And my first thoughts are like, just want to kind of roll my eyes and be like, are you serious? Like, we're gonna actually discuss if the world is round, you know? But then, that's really more where my mind has been as we're kind of preparing for this, is really more in the conspiracy theory world. And then people that I think that I really look up to right now, like Dr. Fauci, that I think is doing a great job, and really, really thankful for him, wanting to come to his defense when I see some things that I think are ridiculous. So that's more what I relate to, and hard for me to have compassion for folks who don't see him the way I see him. That's what I can relate to more.
But in this world, you will have trouble. I mean, we're going to say things that do hurt one another, and I don't believe that it means that we shouldn't, with truth and love, say them anyway.
Jesus was saying things that I think most people didn't believe, they didn't get, they didn't see it as truth. So much of his dialogue seemed to be around that, not just with people who were opposed to him, but even his own disciples. And then at the end, like, he's on the cross and like nobody got it really, you know, this truth that he spoke, it didn't have the impact. He's dying, you know. It didn't work. It didn't seem like it worked. And yet he still went through with it. And so I think that to me was a lesson, like I'm not able to do that, but that's a lesson of when I'm speaking the truth, what tends to make me want to really twist the arm or maybe use some untruths in the truth that I'm telling, or embellish it, or make it sound like I really know, I'm really certain what I'm talking about when I'm only just kind of sure. Like all those kinds of tendencies, which I have, and which I certainly see in some of the examples of some of the conspiracy theory people that I watch some of their videos. You can clearly see them using untruth to serve what they think is truth. And Jesus didn't do that. It's like he had faith that just saying it and kind of whistling in the wind was going to, I don't know, I guess he had faith that God was going to somehow still use that, even though he's hanging on a cross. And that to me was like, gosh, that's amazing. You know, how, like in the service of truth, he just like sticks to his principles and doesn't embellish and just says what he thinks is right. So that's what came out to me. I think there's something else that you are bringing up, Kurt, which is this ability to love people who aren't listening to you and don't seem to care. And then even worse are like after you and want to destroy you because the truth you're saying they don't want to hear. And that's like, you know, golly, I don't know how you do that, but that really, it just struck me, I guess, how unique he was in his ability to do that, or how the story comes across and how unique he was in that. That I just don't see people being able to do today. I think that is a little bit of maybe how we can discern which voices to listen to, because I do think we all have to somehow discern that. And so there are some people, and I'll just say, like Fauci to me represents someone who, in my estimation of what I understand about him, is someone, I'm sure he's not got issues, but he's someone who served. He's someone who seems to be able to, when he communicates, just say something, even though he knows it's going to make a lot of people mad. And doesn't seem to have quite as much determination to make sure people believe him. And that, I think, helps me to trust him a little bit more. So it's a little bit more, you know, Christ-like, I guess. But those are some thoughts that I had.
There are a lot of people that would hear, I think, what you just said and be very, very upset, because your view of what is true, they're going, that's not true.
Yeah.
Correct? So my question becomes for each of you, how do you love people? How do you love people that don't hold your truth position?
There's always that tension between grace and truth. And sometimes Jesus was a little bit more, you're a whitewashed tomb. And sometimes he was more like, cast the first stone. If he was he chose his spots, but his motivation was always he was for that person, whether he was saying hard things or being more gracious. And I think what I see right now is people fighting because they want to be right. And instead of I'm for you. And I see people, they're fighting over that I'm right for the sake of being right, because they feel some sense of power if they're right, and that comforts their anxiety and fear. And so I think that sometimes the best thing, if that's your motivation, is to be right, is to be quiet and to offer up empathy and grace for that person in that moment because they're hurting. And so I think that a lot of us need to drop our armor of needing to be right, because let me tell you, that other person is not listening if they're in that heightened state of I need to be right.
I know what it feels like to be that certain and to fight no matter what and to say whatever I need to say to make sure that I win. As I was thinking through the way I've behaved in the past, when I'm willing to just use quote truth. It's not even truth. I'm just so excited about being right, what I think is right. And I want to be seen as right that I just forget how to love. And I've done that. I know what that feels like.
I was laughing at myself, and I was also really sad. I was in Target a couple of weeks ago, and I was so pissed at this woman who didn't have a mask on, and I wanted to shoot her evil eyes. And then I remember very well, I was in the same parking lot, super pissed off at somebody because they had a mask on 2 weeks before. Because, I'm like, wow, gosh, I've learned a lot in the last 2 weeks that clearly everyone else should have learned. Like, good Lord, I'm scared and tired just like everyone else.
For me to really believe that I'm made right and forgiven by Christ and his mercy alone is a constant battle for me. And it's reflected in my world the way I'm fearful of not being right in situations.
I don't know that I need to be right, but I do want to be seen as competent. And I think that is one of my Achilles heels. That one of my biggest ones. Like, I do not want to be made a fool of.
For me, it's more about control and wanting to be in control and have things under control that I want to then be right or be sure. As a doctor, Jenny, I think you probably relate, and Leslie, you may relate as well when you're talking about competency, but my job is to be right. Like, that's what people pay me to do. So I have to be right. So yeah, to not be right, I definitely would have a fear of that, because if I'm not right, I'm exposed on a fundamental level of who I'm actually supposed to be. Though I think all doctors know a lot of the time we're faking it. Unfortunately, we wish that weren't the case, or we're overstating our case. Maybe we should probably say that, but I don't know how much I fear that. Maybe it's just so much a part of who I am that I haven't even gotten in touch with it yet. But I definitely want to be in control, and so I want to be right, and so that I can feel like I've got it. I've got it all in my hands, and I've got it under control, and it makes sense to me.
There's something in me that wants my suffering to have a reason. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like this is so much of a spiritual battle for all of us, much more than any virus or any illness. It's what it's bringing out in us. It's the fear and the anxiety and the false sense of how we usually think our world is controllable, and we usually think we're in control, and we usually think we have it all together. And this has just like blown our world to smithereens. Our micro worlds are obliterated. And that's just, it's sort of, for me, unmasking what I really kind of hold on to for security. And I see it for me of a gift from Jesus, of saying, you have this idea that the world is a certain way and that it's safe and that it's secure and that you can find security in all these things. And it's a facade. All of it's a facade. Anything can change at a moment's notice. And I'm processing it one way, and someone across the street is processing it totally different, but we're all going through the same thing. And so that if I can just, the grace that I've been given in Christ, if I can just offer that, and sometimes that means laying my arms down and saying, I don't need to be right. I don't even need to discuss me being right with you right now, because you're hurting. We're suffering together. And I think if we could, instead of being divided by our suffering, if we could come together over our suffering. And this is never, I mean, how many times in the world is the entire United States suffering for the same reason? You know, and yet it's causing division rather than us coming together and having a common suffering. And so for me, I think it's just, it's a spiritual battle right now for everybody. And if I can be a source of grace or comfort for somebody, that's kind of where my heart is right now.
I connect a lot with the idea that it's our suffering that brings us together. And I can imagine Jesus just kind of seeing us all the same in that regard. Like, oh, you know, the ER doctors and Chris and Jenny and Kurt, and oh, they're all, you know, and Donald Trump, God bless him, you know, like they're all suffering. You know, he knows he came to give his broken body to all of us. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that kind of love. So I think it's like, you know, jumping to the other side of the universe through the wormhole. You're like, oh, there's a whole other way to like think about everything. And you can kind of see it for like just a moment, just a little moment. And then maybe out of that, live a little bit like that for a moment too, where I'm not as upset at other people because they think differently, or because my control over things is falling apart. Yeah, so that's how maybe there's some, I see some of that. I in addition to this theme of like, I definitely see people being more tribal and more angry. I also see people, like at the beginning, we all kind of talked a little bit about how, like, in some ways it's like this gift, and I almost feel bad to say it because I know it's, to not everyone it's a gift, but maybe it is a gift to everyone in a certain kind of way, like maybe in different ways for everyone, but I feel it as a gift too. Like there's so many obligations and so many things that I don't have to do anymore because it's all just been taken away. And maybe and the air's cleaner and it seems cooler. It doesn't seem like it's as hot. I don't know. There's like a healing that's happening at the same time this horrible thing's happening. And so it's like I like the word unbidden, the unbidden presence of Christ. He's here. He's right now. He's working. He doesn't care how ridiculous we are. He's going to keep doing it. Wow. Okay. And I can count on that. All right. Well, so that maybe that lifts a little bit of the fear and lack of control enough for me to have compassion on someone for a moment.
If we are all made in the image of God, this has been a good, painful shake up for me to look at the people that I don't like particularly, and I vehemently disagree with and think they're dangerous and all of the things. If they are also image bearers, how do I lay down my need to be right or competent or blah, whatever? how do I see them? How are we truly all one? How is that possible? And it, that's been a really hard but beautiful challenge. We're all under, under the same pressure point. We're all image bearers. What am I to see? What am I to experience? How am I to enter into all of it?
Yeah.
It makes me think of Christ, like in his last moments when he was hanging from the cross. He wasn't like, and by the way, I'm the freaking Son of God and I can destroy all of y'all. And he didn't feel that as a need to be right in that moment. He was like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in his last moments of giving his entire life on this earth for us, he didn't feel like that was the need to be like, oh yeah, and let me tell you why you're all wrong and not why I'm right, and so yet he was hanging, yet in just him staying on the cross, he was laying his life down for us. And so I don't know, just that picture of laying your life down and not needing to be right in that moment.
This isn't as Christ-likey, I guess, but I think this moment's helped me reconnect a little bit to our profession for all of us, and that we just kind of take it like for granted. Like we just take it as I don't know, we don't even question it. Like whoever comes into the ER, whoever comes into our office, whatever the situation is, doctors or nurses, we're going to help them. It doesn't matter how, what side of the argument they were on, or whether they wore their masks right or didn't wear their mask right. It's just totally irrelevant, and that's how we've always been. And someone comes in, they were doing drugs, they had a car accident, they killed somebody, we're going to try to save their life. Whatever. We don't even think twice about it. It's really amazing. And so that helps me, it's like, that's part of, I think, how Christ is working. How did he stand up a profession like that? I don't think it's always been that way. And how did he get us to all just kind of accept that and behave that way and believe in it? It's just, part of the Christ-soaked world. He's working, and he'll continue to work whether or not we even recognize it.
Is this good for you, your soul, to talk with one another like this?
It's good for me to be around people that I love so much, and then it helps me extend that same grace to some stranger. Does that make sense?
Honestly, I was pretty reticent to join the call. I was honestly afraid I feel battle weary. And this feels like a place of rest.
Yeah, I think just on a basic level, I just appreciate what you guys have to say, and it helps me appreciate Christ and how to get through this together. Hearing you talk and just hearing your thoughts.
Give me a million reasons. Give me a million reasons. Give me a million